Welcome to my Universal Design for Learning slides. I'm going to begin with principle number 1, engagement, and what I did before versus what I'm doing now. I would provide a rubric after the scholars wrote because I went over all of the writing steps, but now I'm actually going to include the rubric in the slide. So they have a link to the slide and a video as well. So I am including that so they're able to see this rubric on their own, at their own pace. Principle number 2, representation. Use examples and non-examples. In the past, I would only provide a great example. Was the only example they would get. They would not get a non-example. Now I am providing a non-example and what a one looks like. And so we look at punctuation, grammar, spelling, and structure. So we see an example. This seems great, except, there are between 4 to 8 errors. So that reduces a grade, that lowers a grade. So then we have another non-example. In this one, the beginning of each sentence does not have a capital. He indented on the second line, so that reduces points. So here is an example of 9 or more errors. Principle number 3, action and expression. In this one, we're using interactive and animated web tools. In the past, students have access to Google Slides in science. Right now we're learning about plants. This time, not only do we have the slides with vocabulary words, we also have a web tool. I added that in, the image and vocabulary. If you're by yourself, it wouldn't have a scoreboard really. But since I'm against a teammate, these look like pesticides. And we're going over science words, science terms that have to do with plants. Pesticides, I remember that was the visual, the image that went with it. And so that person scored a point and they keep going until they lose. That's a producer, and that says attracting. So we would continue, and that they look like they're producing. Yes, so that would be producing something, just like flowers can produce more with the help of a pollinator. Attracting, that's a match. So that was a freebie right there, right? So you can see the scoreboard at the top, and that's a pollinator. So that's the web game that we would play. Here are more interactive games. So we read in English as well, but here you could see that it says first and last. The phrases are actually in Spanish. It says flowers. That would be the last thing. Flores, frutos, o conos. And then the beginning would be the seed germinates, right? Brota, sprouts. Plantula is a young seedling. Adulto joven is a young plant, the adult plant. Finally, it blooms and it produces more flowers. That's why it says flores. Reset. And so that would be the interactive tool. Something that I would use as a something to reflect. I would actually prompt students to stop and think or show and explain. That would be something I would use in the future, inserting images, because they work very well with groups. So they could each select an image reflecting on what they learned while they're stopping and thinking, they're discussing. So they need time to discuss, stop, and think about what they're going to insert in their Google Sites that's related to their topic, which is plants at this time, or they have an option to show and explain their work on Flipgrid. So they could actually show, if they created a diorama or they drew a picture, they could show that on Flipgrid while they're discussing it in the video. The scholars have learned how to use Flipgrid. So that would be a great way to show their end result or whatever they stopped and thought about, reflect, share, on Flipgrid. So since I already know how to use Flipgrid, the next thing would be to use Google Slides. That way they have a choice. Do they prefer sharing with Google Slides or showing and explaining on Flipgrid.